This Equipment World video is brought to you by Chevron Delo 600 ADF Ultra Low Ash Diesel Engine Oil. It's time to kick some ash.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Equipment World. You're watching The Dirt. I'm your host Brian, and today we're here to talk about the Sneaky Beast. That's just what I'm going to call this machine. It is the Sneaky Beast. We're talking about the Hitachi 210-6. That's the newest model of the 210, and it's one of 3 excavators that Hitachi has released post John Deere. And so this is a 100% Hitachi machine. Deere has not had any hand in this, and Hitachi saved a couple things to put into this machine to differentiate it from John Deere's newer equipment. Before we even start this review, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Hitachi for bringing me down. I was flown to Atlanta to go run this machine, and I do want to say thank you. Now, the second thing I want to say is because of some logistical issues, because we had our delivery truck actually break down during the delivery of the machine, unfortunately, I was only able to sit in this machine for about an hour and a half. So all of my recap of this machine is going to be based off of somewhat limited experience in the machine. The other thing that this has done is it limited me on how much I got to know about the features built into the machine. I like to go into a machine totally blind. I don't want people telling me what everything is and what to expect, because then you kind of get these preconceived notions. Because we were so short on time, I actually didn't get to go through this machine with the engineering team like I really wanted to. And so as a result, since I've gotten back, I've been learning significantly more about this machine, which has really led me to call it the Sneaky Beast. And we'll get into that here in just a second.
But before we get into that, I want to take a second to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Chevron Lubricants. Protecting your diesel engine and its exhaust aftertreatment system has traditionally been seen as an either-or proposition when it comes to choosing the engine oil that's going to protect your system. And that's exactly why Chevron spent more than a decade of R&D work developing a no-compromise formulation. Now, I don't have to tell you why a clogged DPF is bad news, but here's the real kick in the pants. 90% of that ash clogging up your DPF and then upping your fuel and maintenance costs, it comes from your engine oil. You might be thinking, why don't they make an engine oil with less ash in it then? You'll be happy to learn that Chevron agrees with you. They've developed a new ultra-low ash diesel engine oil that is specifically designed to combat DPF ash clogging. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology cuts sulfate ash by 60%, radically reducing the rate of DPF clogging and extending the DPF service life by 2.5 times. Before, you had to choose between protecting your engine or your aftertreatment system. Now you don't. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology. It's time to kick some ash.
I want to start talking about this machine by the outside. So on the outside of the machine, there's not going to be anything huge that really sticks out to you to differentiate this between the older Dash 5 models, with the exception of on the frame of the machine, the side rails of the machine, on each side, you will see the words high performance. This is talking about what's packed into this machine that we will get into later in this little recap. But that's the only real big differentiator you're going to see. Outside of that, you have an LED light package. This thing is super bright. I did get to see it in the nighttime as the sun was setting, and it really did a great job of lighting up the job site. The light kit on this machine is fantastic. They did a great job of keeping the lights on for you after you shut the machine off for about 2 to 3 minutes. I didn't actually time it, but it was plenty of time that you could shut the machine off, get your stuff together, climb out of the machine, wait for the DEF to pump back into the tank, and shut off your master. And I would guess right about the time you started to walk away from the machine, the lights will go out on their own. That's a really nice feature so that you're not, breaking your ankle or something while you're trying to get around the machine if you work late at night and you're trying to get everything shut down in the dark. Really great feature. The other thing you'll notice on the outside is the camera package. This machine has cameras on the driver's side, the passenger side, and the rear of the machine. Now, the cool thing here is you can use those all 3 together in a 270-degree mode on your monitor in the cab, or you can split the cameras out individually like you would on a traditional camera system. Now, my one small critique here is that Hitachi's monitor in the cab is still just a hair small, and so as a result, in the 270-degree view, you get a really good idea of what's going on big picture with the machine, but there were a couple times where an individual was standing pretty close to my swing area, and I didn't see them until they started moving around on the camera. When you flip over into the individual camera mode, this is not a problem at all. You still have great visibility. But because of the size of the monitor, the 270-degree cam is a little more difficult to see some guys on the job site. Now, the 270-degree cam is really handy. As I mentioned, our truck had some issues right at delivery of the machine. And so I actually had to side unload in a neighborhood off of the trailer, and I had to be conscientious of cars everywhere because this is a residential neighborhood. I had to be conscientious of the curb so we didn't screw that up. That 270 cam made it to where I knew I had plenty of clearance with my counterweight. I knew exactly where the curb line was in relation to my tracks. It was a really, really nice thing to have. The other thing you're going to notice about this machine when you're sitting in the cab is the amount of space. It's a very spacious cab. It's very comfortable. You have a very comfortable operator station. I didn't even get to go into really making the seat my own, if you will. All of the different adjustments and things you can play with. Unfortunately, because of the limited time I had with this machine, I did not get a chance to really dial that in, but I do know there are a phenomenal amount of adjustments on the seat, as you would expect on most of your nicer excavators these days. Buttons and the layout of your right-hand armrest is all going to be pretty similar to the conventional Hitachi John Deere setup. It's all very functional. Everything is right where you need it, right there on your right-hand side, from HVAC controls to radio to getting into the menus for your monitor. It's all right here on your right-hand panel. Now, another cool feature that this machine offers is before you actually start the engine and you turn your key into the accessory position, you can click and hold a button on your right-hand panel there, and it will actually do a coolant and oil level check for you. So instead of having to climb up on the machine, you can simply hit this button and hold it. It will make sure that you have adequate oil and coolant levels, and then you are free to fire up. This machine also samples the oil quality and will tell you when you are needing an oil change rather than you just having to rely on the regular service interval. Really cool features packed in there. Now, another aspect of this cab, and this is where we're going to start getting into kind of the funkiness of the way this review went down. So as I mentioned, I didn't get time to go through this machine with the engineers. So there's a lot of features that I didn't even know about until I got back into town. And that's what's kind of caused me to refer to this machine as the sneaky beast. The cab on this thing is really, really quiet. And as a result, it didn't feel like the machine had a ton of power because it was so quiet. Another feature on this machine, and I know we're starting to move outside of the cab here, another feature on this machine is they have a new governing platform on it. And what it does is it causes the engine not to bog like a traditional excavator when it's under load. It does a really great job of keeping your RPMs really steady, which, as we all know, that keeps you right in the middle of that power curve of the engine. That's a really nice feature to have. But this is why it's the sneaky beast. When I was running this machine, it felt like the machine had more to give, and it just wasn't giving it to me. It felt almost, I even described it to the engineers, it felt like the pump pressures were just turned down. It just felt like you could squeeze more out of this machine. It just didn't want to give it up. It wasn't until I got back that I realized, first of all, just how quiet the cab is on this machine. And secondly, no one had told me about that governing feature. And so I kept expecting the engine to bog under load, and it just wouldn't. It didn't bog. It didn't feel like we were ever under any real load. And that's really a testament to the technology built into the machine that I didn't know what I was dealing with. So that was the first area where I really started to think of this thing as a sneaky beast. And to be honest, I'll be brutally honest, when I was running the machine, I was kind of underwhelmed at it, because this starts to move us into another feature of this machine, which is the Trios 2 3 hydraulic pump system. So one thing that's going to stick out to you on this machine is when you open the pump compartment, you're immediately going to notice this is not your traditional excavator pump setup. It has 3 hydraulic pumps, and there are a whole complex series of valves that allow the engineers to divert this hydraulic oil to wherever you need it, whenever you need it, but mostly keeping it with your primary functions: boom, stick, bucket. Now, what's really cool is that makes this a really fast machine, but this is where we circle back to our cab. It didn't feel that fast to me because I was going into this. The one thing we did talk about is the Trios 2 system, the 3 hydraulic pumps. And so I was expecting this machine to really throw me out of the seat. We were going to be zipping all over the place. And that didn't feel like it was the case. The machine felt a little jerky to me. It felt like it had more power to give, and it really didn't feel that fast. That's why this is the sneaky beast. I got home from this trip and I was starting to go through my footage. And at this point, I was a little underwhelmed because of all the hype around the 3 hydraulic pumps. And I was just going, man, it didn't feel that fast to me until I started going through my in-cab footage. And that's where I was really blown away. And that's where my whole mentality towards this machine shifted. This machine is lightning fast. Watching the amount of swing torque that is instantly available, you can really see it from the in-cab footage. When I look at some of the movements I was doing and how fast my boom and stick were operating while swinging, while moving the bucket, this machine has a lot of power and it's got a lot of speed to it. But Hitachi has done so well with the other technology built into the unit, such as the quiet cab, such as the engine governing system, that you don't realize it while you're operating. That's how well it is implemented, is you're moving so fast that the machine actually feels like it's being jerky. But really what it is the machine is moving so fast you're not used to it. But it does it in such a smooth way that it doesn't feel that fast. So it really messes with your mind when you run this machine. And like I said, the whole time I'm running it, I was just kind of underwhelmed with it, until I got back and I got to see it kind of from an outsider's perspective of just how fast that machine was moving. Now, another thing that I was really impressed with was the amount of swing power. So when you're actually moving side to side and batting piles around like we're often familiar with doing on the job, it's going to perform relatively similarly to other excavators in that weight class. Where it really impressed the snot out of me is we were on a residential job site doing an addition in a subdivision, and so there was a pile of brush and stumps, and I picked up a good sized stump, still had a big old wad of mud on the root ball. This sucker was heavy. The machine was starting to get tippy when I sticked out about halfway with this thing, so it had a significant amount of weight. I was able to get the machine on about probably a 15 to 20 degree slope if I had to guess. And I immediately took that stump all the way to my downhill side and just cranked over and started to swing uphill. This machine, you couldn't even tell I had anything in the bucket. And that is not an exaggeration. I know sometimes I say things and it's quite exaggerated. No joke. This thing did not feel like it had anything in the bucket, to the point that I took it back downhill 2 or 3 more times just to see if there was something going on. It had that much swing torque. I was very, very impressed with that thing. And I actually impressed a couple of the engineers as well. They made a comment after I got out of the cab at just how well that machine swung. So that was very, very impressive about the machine. Another aspect of this machine I really liked was the heavy counterweight. These guys have put a heavy counterweight on this machine. It actually has a heavy duty boom on it. And what has happened as a result is you have a very stable machine. I was able to load this sucker up with some really heavy material, which was another aspect of this whole review that was very interesting. I'm not used to digging in Georgia soil. And so just kind of learning how the machine was reacting versus how much the soil was playing into it was a whole other aspect of this. But I was able to heap the snot out of that bucket. It was equipped with a quick coupler and a thumb, so that was a very heavy setup. I took the stick all the way out and kind of bounced just to get a feel for it. And while you did start to get tippy when you really got aggressive with your boom dipping down, this was a really stable machine, and I really love the fact that they did incorporate a really heavy counterweight into it. Now, another thing you're really going to like about this machine is access to the engine. This thing has 2 massive doors on the top of it that give you full access to the engine. It is really, really easy to work on this machine just because of the amount of access you have. And I do like the fact that they've broken it up into 2 doors instead of a single panel, just because from a weight standpoint, we're all familiar with you're walking out to your machine at 6:30 in the morning. It's a pain in the butt to lift a giant lid on that thing just to check the oil. It is nice that you have a section really for doing your fluid and maintenance checks versus opening up the full engine compartment to do an actual service or real maintenance on the machine. So I will say this, there are a lot of features on this machine that I don't know anything about because, like I said, I didn't get a chance to walk this thing with the engineers where they could really tell me about all of the features. But one of these is the enhanced boom hydraulic recirculation system. Apparently, as your boom cylinders are going down, you have pressurized oil coming out of those boom cylinders, they can recirculate that oil into your stick, which gives you a faster stick out. I don't know anything about how that works. I didn't really know how that was impacting what I was doing. All I can say is there are a lot of features packed into this machine to make it fast, and yet at the same time, the machine doesn't feel like it's fast. This machine has a lot of power, but with all of the features, it doesn't feel like it's got all the power. It's, like I said, it's the sneaky beast. This thing is a really interesting machine. So I will say this. I know this was a limited recap and it doesn't have nearly the information that you're looking for as a contractor. And for that, I do apologize, but that's what you get when I only get an hour and a half of seat time. I will say this about the machine. It is absolutely worth looking at if you are a contractor that's in the market looking at a newer excavator. And I will say I'm kind of wanting to get my hands on this machine for a couple weeks to go do an official review on it. This was the first time I really spent any seat time in a Hitachi. I have a lot to learn about these machines, but this was a really, really interesting machine to run. So thank you again to Hitachi, and thank you guys for watching. Drop questions, comments down below, and we will do our best to get those answered for you. If you've got specific questions about this machine, we can try to touch back with the people at Hitachi and get those answered for you. We'll catch you guys on the next episode of The Dirt.